Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Dance Teacher Pep Talk. I am your host, Amanda, and I am so glad you are here. This is a space for dance teachers and anyone interested in teaching dance who is looking for motivation and fresh ideas. As teachers, we spend our days motivating and giving pep talks to our students, and now this podcast is a pep talk just for you. We hope that it helps to ignite new ideas and even work through some deep dance related thoughts before you head into the studio. Thank you for your support, and now let's get into today's episode. Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Hello to all the dancers and dance teachers and everybody listening to today's podcast. I hope that your day is off to a great start. I am recording this episode early September, and it just feels like such a fresh new start, fresh new energy, and I'm really excited about the month ahead. And today's episode is probably going to be a quicker episode because this is going to be more of like a classroom exercise that you could take with you if you'd like into your night and just some inspiration to provide a fresh idea. Sometimes over the years, I like to look for new exercises to bring at the beginning of the year to make it really start off with an exciting, fresh new take. And so I thought today would be a good day to introduce this exercise. And the reason I'm doing it on a podcast is it's a little too long to explain on a reel for Instagram, but it is so worth it. And this exercise for me has held so much value over the years. And the best thing about it is usually, I want to say like 99% of the time, my dancers love it and even at times request doing it. So today is an exercise that you can try out in your classroom, and it takes about 15 minutes. Maybe a little bit longer if you go into more discussion with it. But it is an improv based exercise. And with improv, we tend to see that done mainly in maybe your contemporary, your modern lyrical classes. But I do feel that this exercise could be used in any style. And though I haven't done it in other styles, maybe this year I might try doing it in jazz to start off the year. I'm kind of curious about trying that. I could even see this being done in ballet. I could see this being done in hip hop. Tap might be a little bit more difficult, but I'd be curious to see if you did try this in your tap class, how it would go. Because, like I said, this is an improv based exercise, a freestyle based exercise. And what I call it improv analysis. And the goal for this exercise is to seek out the strength in others, to recognize those strengths and to realize what we all bring to the table to make up the class. Most years, I do this exercise at recital time or maybe at the start of a competition season. However, this year, I might do it at the beginning of the year. And I was thinking about it, and I feel that this exercise would be great to do at the beginning of the year because it all gets us working together in this way with this exercise. As I mentioned before, it can be done at recital time, competition season, starters, because the exercise is a great unifier. You know, we dance together sometimes daily, and we are very much all living individual, independent experiences. And though we try to unify and we try to be in sync and dance together, especially on those unison sections of our pieces, it is hard to really dive deep into what it means to be in sync and unified unless we are aware of what is happening around us. What are others bringing to the table? So, this exercise could be done in different age levels. I feel your expectations would just shift for different age levels. So, if you are going to do this exercise in an elementary classroom, the discussion is probably not going to bring up all of the topics that, say, this exercise would bring in your high school level classes. What I really love about this exercise is that it gets us thinking outside of ourselves and looking at the class as a whole. Because it's very easy for us. I mean, we are taking class as one person, living the experience of the class through just ourselves. But this exercise helps us to open up the outlook of what is going on around us and how others might be taking their class experience. So, the reason that I call it improv analysis is because it gets dancers observing dance and analyzing. And I like to go over those words. I like to go over the words observing and analyzing because there is a difference between analyzing something and judging something. And it's also important to talk about what is observation because when we're observing things, we are looking at what is directly in front of us or wherever you are, and we are making clear statements. Judging is a little bit different because it involves more of an opinion coming into it. So, in watching dance, if you're analyzing something, we're looking at it just at what is happening. The dancer did a tendu. And then, if we're adding a judging component to it, it would be the dancer did the tendu well, or the dancer's tendu lacks full stretch through the shape, things like that. So, the reason that I like to clarify between analysis and judgment is because it gets the dancers thinking about the statements they're making and also not even just the statements they're saying, but the statements that they're thinking in their head. Because as I mentioned in our setting up the tone and setting up the space, it's so important to create an environment of trust in your classroom around improv because if we don't feel trust in the space, we're going to really hold back in different ways in our movement. And if you're looking for an exercise to help build trust, I did put one up on the Dance Teacher Pep Talk about creating a space for trusting movement. So you could check that out. It's a trust improv classroom tip. All right, so now let's get into the how to's of this. And I'm going to try to explain this because it is difficult without seeing it happen in real time. But like I said, this would be way too long for an Instagram reel. So to start, what you would do is you're going to write down each dancer's name of your class on squares of paper. And you're going to break those squares up into two groups. And I would even create two piles. So for explanation circumstance, let's call them pile one and pile two. And then you're going to break up your class into two groups. So we'll call those dancers group one and group two. The pile one is filled with the names of those in group one, and pile two has all of the names of dancers of group two. So you're going to break up the groups exactly how you break up the piles. Now, if there's an odd number, this is interesting because if there's an odd number, you join in too. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But it can be really fun for your dancers and really inspiring to see their teacher take part in this at any ability that you are able to bring into this exercise. So you've got your two piles. Group one names have the pile one, group two names are in pile two. Now, the dancers from group two are going to pick up a square from pile one, and dancers from group one are picking up a square from pile two. No one can share the names yet, but once the dancer picked up that name and see who they have on their square, once they know that name, they can throw it away. The name they picked is who they are going to be observing when it comes time for the observation round. So now the movement gets started. Group one is going to dance first. And as they dance, group two is going to be watching who they picked from the pile one, who their name was from the pile one, and they're going to be analyzing and observing. So, some questions that I prompt the students to ask is what movements does the dancer that you're watching do? What stylistic components do they include in their improv? Is there a general level of space that the dancer spends their time in? What sticks out as being unique that they are doing? If you could look at the movement they are doing almost like their signature, what stands out about that particular dancer that you are spending time observing? So that is what they're looking for as the dancers are dancing. And so group one is going to improv for about a minute, maybe more, because I think it does take some time to build into, like, it's almost like they have to warm up into it too, into their movement. And it also helps group two to have that time to really analyze and see what is happening. So, if you are involved in this process, you would have had to put your name on a piece of paper. This is only if there's an odd number in your class. So, you would have put your name on a piece of paper. And if it is your turn to dance, you're going to dance. Now, it could be anything. It could be just walking and using your arms. You could really go for it if you want to do any type of movement that you'd like in your improv. If there are certain things that you love to do and are unique to that, you're going to spend the time doing those moves when it comes time for your improv round. All right, so now group one has improv. And now group two is going to get up to dance. Group one is now going to observe and watch. But group two is not dancing like themselves. They are dancing like the person they watched, using the analysis and observations that they put together from the prompts that you set up and coached them through. And now, as group two dances, group one is trying to figure out who is dancing as them. And at the end of the round, we all sit down and have a discussion, and group one guesses which member of group two had them. So they're looking to see who is dancing like me, who is doing the things that I do. And we talk about that too, because it also brings up the awareness of, oh, I think that Rebecca had me because I love turning. I also love doing floor work. And I noticed that Rebecca did a lot of turns and a lot of floor work in her improv. And so, okay, maybe that was the pair. And it's really so interesting to see because whenever I've taken part in it too, it's so interesting of how they perceive your movement and the things that you do. And then it also helps bring awareness to if I'm doing a lot of repetitive movements that are the same. And so that is also a learning tool for my future improvs of how to break through some of the common things that I do repetitively, or maybe things to try to take me out of those comfort zones. So at the end of the round, we do the guessing and then it switches and we do that all over again. So now it would be like the opposite of that. So group two is dancing, but as their own selves, and group one is watching who they had. And then group one dances as the person they were watching. And we have that guessing discussion at the end. So, things that I've noticed that can be really beneficial with this exercise is number one, the dancers love doing this. Like I said, they request it a lot. And I think part of why they also love doing it is because, like, we don't do it that often. I probably do it once a year. Maybe now this year I'll do it twice a year if I include it in the beginning. But it's really fun for them because I think they also like to hear what others have to say about the observations of their movements. It's been an excellent teaching tool for improv in that way. So, things I've noticed is that one, dancers begin to be aware of what observation and dance mean. And it's not just watching, but really taking in. It requires you to be super present and watching. And you cannot be distracted by outside means or thoughts during this time because when you're really in an observation, you're really zoned in on the thing that you're supposed to be watching or observing. And so this is actually a really good mindfulness practice because mindfulness is, the art of staying in the present moment and all that encompasses that. So, by doing observation in class, it creates a mindful moment for them because all they need to be doing at that time is observing. They're not thinking about what's going to happen at the end of the exercise. They're not thinking about what's going to happen after class, but they have to be watching and be super present in that moment. Another benefit is it really helps dancers to understand the strengths and comforts of each dancer in the class, including themselves. It helps dancers to see what they typically do or how their dancing is seen as when they are performed by another person. And lastly, it brings a sense of unity and appreciation for all that each dancer brings to the table. So, there are so many different benefits to this exercise, but we really cannot do this exercise in our classroom unless there is a strong element of trust. And that's why I do recommend maybe week one setting up an environment and an expectation of trust, non judgment, appreciation, kindness. Basically, honestly, if you look at all the principles of what makes up mindfulness, if you take that and turn them into classroom expectations, I think that's an excellent idea because it's all about being in the present moment, but it's also about being open, having compassion, kindness in your space. And I think that is so necessary when we're doing any type of movement like this, even across the floor. Because let's be real, I know when I was a teen or a preteen going across the floor, there was always this feeling of eyes on me, and I felt very nervous going across the floor. It was very intimidating in comparison to doing, say, like groups and combination, because as you're going across the floor, it might just be two of you or three or maybe even one. And that's a lot of like I said, eyes on you kind of feeling. And though it's great, like I loved the feeling of across the floor. I loved being able to just like sweep across the space. There was an underlying level of, am I doing this right? What are people thinking about me? Am I doing this wrong? Things like that. And so that would actually like inhibit my movement a lot. And I feel like it added to my nervousness. So I don't know if any of you have ever experienced that, but that was something that was really real for me. So I'm super aware of that in my classroom as a teacher now. So, like I said, building an environment of trust and non judgment is not only important for these improv exercises to be built up to the level that they can really be and the potential that they have, but also just for the overall general flow of your class. So, number one, create some trust in your space. And if you want to look back on our Dance Teacher Pep Talk Instagram, I do have a suggestion of an exercise that would work with preteens and teens for that. But this exercise, the improv analysis, could be done with multiple age groups. It could also be done in multiple styles. And it'd be really cool to see, the differences in the genres of dance of how they're bringing their strengths and doing these little analysis exercises about what is it that you feel comfortable with, that you find in your space of work in ballet. What do you feel most comfortable doing in jazz? And bringing that into this exercise to now have that be observed, analyzed, and seen and discussed. On our Dance Teacher Pep Talk Instagram yesterday, our classroom tip was all about having sign-ups for improv exercises. And I will just kind of warn you that sometimes once you do this, then when it comes to sign up time, a lot of the dancers are going to want to do this as their sign up. And so what I let them know is that there is a time frame around the improvs that they are bringing in, because you can't allot for so much of your class time week to week for these kind of longer improvs. But if you were to do it and lead it as the teacher, say in maybe the second or third week of dance, you can set aside that 15-20 minute chunk, because it involves needing time for both groups to do their dancing and also both groups to do their observation and the discussion that happens afterward. And I think the discussion is also an extremely important part of that, because that's where the analysis and the observation comes through. So I'd be so excited to hear if you do this in your classroom, how it works out for you. If you ever wanted to send me a message on our Instagram. And if you aren't following us on Instagram, please do so at Dance Teacher Pep Talk, because there are so many content, bonus features, little tidbits and things like that that you can pick up there on our Instagram. And I also have done some little bonus mini podcast thoughts that I keep only on our Instagram for the Instagram followers. So make sure to follow or like us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon Music. And if you feel called to rate or review or share this episode with friends or colleagues, we would so appreciate it. I hope that your new season is off to an incredible start. Next week, we have some really deep dive topics that we're going to go into, more mindfulness content for the dance teachers. So I hope that you're able to tune in for that, and have an incredible day, everybody. Thank you so much for listening.